Total Screen proudly presents the Weekly Set Podcast with Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Episode 213, recorded July 6, 2019. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of the Total Screen. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at the Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about the third and final season of Jessica Jones. Not just the final season of Jessica Jones, but the last remnant of the Netflix Marvel MCU, whatever.
Is how the Netflix Marvel MCU goes out.
Yes, it's the end of all of that. And then we're also going to be talking about Legion Season 3, Episode 2. But we're going to be starting off with Jessica Jones, and we're going to be discussing the full season here, and probably going to be kind of drifting all over the place, because I think we're going to be talking about the Marvel Netflix stuff in general, I'm sure, at some point in the conversation. I have to say, just my real quick take on it before we get anything else. The way Jessica Jones season 2 ended, there were certain characters that what they were doing and their reaction to that they were doing things a certain way really annoyed the crap out of me. Mm-hmm. I was like, what? It was just really pissing me off. And they actually kind of played on that in season 3, which I enjoyed that aspect. I think overall season 3 was a little bit weaker than, season 1, but the fact that it addressed the problems I had with season 2 in such a head-on way by the very end.
For me, season 3 was better than season 2, but still not as good as season 1. And being better than season 2 is not a high bar to cross, by the way. It's better, but I still, my overall feelings on this were, if I had to give it a rating, it'd be like a 6. I just felt it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And there was a lot of times where I was just bored or annoyed with what was going on. I felt like there was a lot of filler, which is a problem with these Marvel Netflix shows in general, but really felt like a problem with this. I constantly, why does this have to be 13 episodes?
Yeah.
We literally did 2 episodes that were going over the exact same events from a previous episode, just from Trish's perspective instead, which felt like padding, because
there's a contrived there's a contrived format that all of the Netflix Marvel shows have, even the good ones have, where it's things have to go this way and then they have to go that way and then they have to go this way, and it all seems forced just to make sure that they can fill out 13 episodes.
Right.
That's really annoying. So yeah, that's a little disappointing. I really wish they'd cut down the episode count. I mean, not the cutting down the episode count fixes everything. The Defenders was 8 episodes and that sucked. So.
Yeah, it's not the episode count. It's just that if you don't have a story that requires 13 episodes, and these shows rarely do, you're not getting anything out of having 13 episodes. If we have to redo the same episode twice, just from a different character's perspective, you don't have 13 episodes of story.
Yeah.
Slim it down.
So kind of the main crux of this story, I guess, is that Jessica Jones ends up encountering a serial killer.
Oh,
and
that's
I'm
terrible.
not gonna break down the whole events of how it happened, but
right.
She encounters a serial killer. She ends up on his radar. He ends up on hers. It seems like this whole season's going to be about that. And then it really isn't.
No, the season is actually about the relationship between Jessica Jones and Trish, which was in a pretty bad place at the end of season 2, because Trish killed Jessica's mom. So we started season 3 with Jessica hating Trish's guts and not wanting anything to do with her. And as we know from the end of season 2, because of the experiment Trish went through, Trish got her own superpowers, and then so she decides to just become a vigilante because she has superpowers now.
This is the aforementioned thing I was talking about, the thing about season 2 that I really hated. And that was that Trish basically just murdered Jessica's mom with all of this righteous indignation.
She's still righteous about it when the season starts.
Yeah, but it just felt weak and unearned, and just like she was just using it as an excuse to, and it was what she did to Jessica by doing that. And then she's just well, get over it, Jessica. Jessica. And then Jessica's like, what the fuck do you mean get over it? That was my goddamn mom, you know?
Exactly.
Like, I was handling that situation. I had her
Trish.
in a position where I was working on that. I was figuring it out. And you just jumped the gun and fucking murdered my last living relative.
I'm sorry, but Trish is a terrible character, and she continues to be a terrible character in this season. Like, there was no point in the season where I felt like any sympathy for Trish, because she's acting like this season has Trish go completely off the reservation, and it's completely unearned because I have no clue what the hell is wrong with her to make her like be acting the way she's acting.
But that started last season.
That started last season when she got like addicted to that drug. And I guess like she had that excuse last season where she was like on this drug that was like amping her up. She's not on drugs this season and she's still being crazy as fuck. And it's like, come on.
Well, that's why I said that I like that they addressed the problem with season 2 head on with Trish.
Right.
In that by the end of the season, they made it clear Trish is way off the deep end. Yeah. Not like in a fixable way, like in a she has to turn herself in and go to jail sort of way.
Right.
And she wasn't realizing it, but everybody else was. And I was like, finally! Because I was so sick of it, everybody basically blaming Jessica at the end of season 2.
Oh, yeah.
Like going like, oh, Jessica screwing up. And it's like, look at what Trish fucking did. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then in this season, they were like still kind of playing it off and on, like, ooh, they have differing philosophies, who's right and who's wrong, and the whole time I'm like, Jessica's fucking right, you know? And they kept going through it, and then by the end, I was happy that they finally addressed it.
Yeah,
they finally said no, like, concretely, Trish has gone off the deep end, and I like that Jessica brought it up to her, that it wasn't because she got powers or something. That this is like, goes back to her childhood. This goes back to an aspect of her personality that's always been there, but not having powers, not having the ability to do anything with all that righteous indignation is what kept her from going off the deep end. And the second she had that, like her moral philosophy, it wasn't that getting power changed her moral philosophy, it's that it enabled her to act on her moral philosophy. It was always fucked up.
I was annoyed at the beginning of the season that it looked like they were continuing to make Jessica out to be the bad guy and like being unreasonable with Trish, because they were kind of like, especially with that second episode where they were showing things from Trish's perspective, like really made Jessica out to be the asshole. And I was like, and I felt like that was the direction the season was going, like Jessica would like have to be forced to admit she was being an asshole and like mend her relationship with Trish, but I'm glad like it didn't actually end up going that way. But
I don't think that they were trying to portray her as like Jessica Jones as being in the wrong. I think what they were trying to do, and that they were kind of failing to do, was that they were trying to show it as two different perspectives.
Right, yeah.
I think what they wanted to do is they said, okay, we know Trish is off the rails, but we have to try to find a way to make the audiences think that like, oh no, that's just a different viewpoint.
Right.
And then by the end of the season, then oh no, it's not a different viewpoint. She's off the rails. But in order for that to effectively work, they had to kind of try to convince you that there was a different viewpoint before they pulled the rug out on you.
Right.
And I think that's what was happening at the beginning of the season. It wasn't them portraying Jessica as the villain. It was them. They were trying to make Trish seem redeemable but that wasn't working on me. Like, no. When they had like the part, for example, when Trish visits Jessica in the hospital and she's like, oh, you called for me. Here's the get well kit, that I made and all this. And Jessica's just like, just give me his name and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And then Trish got all offended by that. And I'm like, well, what the fuck did you think? Like, at this point, Jessica Jones is basically like, I got stabbed because of your activities.
Yeah.
After you murdered my mother.
Yeah. At this point, Jessica Jones thinks she got stabbed from somebody like that guy Trish attacked hired, because she jumped in and tried to stop Trish from like basically killing this guy, and now Jessica Jones, for all she knows at this point, she got stabbed because this guy decided to go after her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out that it's actually our aforementioned serial killer that did it. So I guess I should explain exactly what happens, because at the beginning of the season, Jessica meets this guy in a bar. He hits on her, very, very successfully hits on her, manages to get into her apartment, and that's when she gets stabbed. And it's interesting because you don't know this guy yet, so you don't know if like he orchestrated this or whatever. It actually turns out that he has this power where he could sense evil in people, and he's been using it to blackmail various evil people that he's come across. You know,
basically, you can tell someone's like sociopathic.
Yeah. Well,
and when they're sociopathic, it makes them physically ill.
Yeah, it makes them. He describes as he can feel like the darkness coming off of people. Like it's not sociopathic people so much as like it's like people who are morally questionable. There's degrees too, because, you know, like his headache is stronger the more evil people he come across are.
Mm-hmm.
It gives him headaches and stuff. And so it turns out he's been blackmailing these people. And one of the people he's been blackmailing is a serial killer. And
Salinger.
Salinger. He's the guy who stabs Jessica, but he was really there to stab her new boyfriend.
Yes.
For lack of a better word.
So she gets wrapped up in his life and, you know, meets his sister and figures out what his deal is, his story. And he goes from being kind of like a suspect to being like somebody who's unfortunately wrapped somebody else up in his problems.
I'm glad they didn't like do like some twist where it turns out like he was like an asshole all along and just like scamming Jessica or pulling Jessica into this plot or whatever. I like that it turned out in the end that he was actually genuine, because there was like very easily like several points in the story where it looked like it was going to turn to some twist. And one of the annoying things about this season was like every man like that you come across is like a bad guy in this in some way or another. Like Jesus Christ, like even people's dads are just like I don't know what the hell. But that's like another thing. Like okay, like everybody's dad is evil apparently. Everybody in this universe had terrible fathers.
Yeah. That goes to the Marvel Netflix thing of just having some pretty flat two-dimensional characters.
Yeah.
And that kind of push to darkness that like, you know, as much as I enjoy dark moments and dark content and stuff, it's like that push to like absolute darkness and like at the expense of all levity is kind of a bad thing.
Well, it actually becomes kind of a joke. It actually becomes comical at a point because like, you know, like in this season you have, you know, the side story with like Jerry and, you know, she gets back in touch with an old flame from college and she's married to this guy. And of course, this guy is doing some bad shit on the side. Like he's a terrible person. And then like, you know, like there's like, this guy is terrible. This guy is terrible. When it comes to like when they reveal like the fifth guy who's like some evil asshole, it just becomes a joke at that point, like a running joke.
Yeah.
You know, by the time like it gets to like Trish talking about her father or something, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, it's just comical at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of a problem that it's always had, but it's just kind of even more on display. Let's talk a little bit about Jerry Hogarth's story.
Oh, God. I was
like, without going into too much detail, because I really don't want to break down everything that happened.
I thought this brought down the season because I was like, why is it? It was like a complete mess, I thought.
But come on, the ending was great.
The ending was great. The ending, yeah, I liked the ending because I really thought like she was going to get out of it with like zero consequences, and I was going to be pissed off because all she does is like be evil throughout the entire season. And then I thought like she was just gonna like get away with it with like no consequences. But the ending is when she finds out like this woman, like she's been obsessed with, you know, finally says to her, "You're gonna die alone." I thought that's great. That's what needed to happen. Yeah. But yeah, she does like all kinds of crazy shit. Like first of all, she ruins like she gets herself involved in this woman's life, and she basically like ruins her marriage. You know, forces her husband to kill himself by bringing out like this shit that he was doing to light, really digging for it. Then she tries to get with her.
It's like immediate. Like she works out, she ends up finding out, oh, they have kind of this open marriage, so I can still have my moment with her. And then like immediately upon that, it's not like even if she just tries to like live in that situation for a while, it's like immediately upon her leaving her apartment, she's like contacting her, you know, underlings and stuff and saying, you know, like we need to like destroy this guy. So I can have her all to myself, you know, like let's get this done.
Yeah. It's not enough to like have have her as part of an open relationship. It's like she has to have her exclusively.
But it's like, the thing is that she didn't even try to live with it as an open relationship for even a second. It was like the second, like, it was revealed that there was an open relationship and she could have everything she wanted with no consequences, nothing. There was like no barrier for her at that point. She could have her in her life. She could enjoy it. She could have all that, and she wouldn't have to do anything wrong at all.
Right. Yeah. She wouldn't have.
And immediately she's like, well, how can I fuck this up?
How can I fuck it? Yeah, how can I fuck this up? And fuck up she does, because she causes this guy to kill himself. He releases a video where he slit his wrist. He's sitting in a bathtub. It's full of blood. And he's calling her out while he's dying on video. Yeah. This causes like all of her clients to like panic and like drop her firm. So she's going into panic mode because her firm is like sinking because of her dumbass actions.
And then she's like, hey, why don't I go and represent a serial killer who's like, who's both like anti-vigilante, like anti the people I've worked with before, but also on top of that seems to be almost kind of like a men's rights type.
I have no clue what because that's her answer. Her answer is like, because Jessica brings her attention to the serial killer, and her first thought is, oh, why don't I represent and try to exonerate the serial killer while demonizing Jessica Jones and Trish and other vigilantes, because that's what's going to bring my firm back to the top. And I'm just like, what?
And then once she knows that Trish Walker is off the rails, she's like, ooh, well, I have somebody I can give to her that doesn't really deserve to die, but would benefit my situation. But if I give her to Trish, then that'll protect it so she doesn't go after me. Yeah, which of course just puts her like even more in Trish's fucking targets for using her. It's like, it's so ridiculous. So
she sends Trish to kill this guy, and then she aborts that when she sees like his daughter, And then she basically goes to attack Jerry, and Jerry's the lover, this woman she's been trying to, obsessively court, that her obsession with this woman started all of her problems in the first place. She happens to drop by, and just when Trish decides to drop by, and then Trish takes her hostage, and it blows up. Everything Jerry tries in the season just blows up in her face. And
see, that's the thing is, like, I like Jerry Hogarth as a character.
I do too.
Storylines have sucked.
Yeah, all her story, especially this season, because like because she's played off as like, this master manipulator. She's supposed to be super intelligent. She's supposed to know how to get at people's secrets and play them to get what she wants. But everything she does in this season, like, so hilariously backfires that it's hard to see her as not being incompetent.
Yeah. It's like she's Elmer Fudd with the shotgun barrel bent back, aimed back at her head when she doesn't notice.
Right, exactly. And so like after all that shit, like because the thought that like nothing was going to happen to her at the end of the season was like infuriating. And then finally, in the last episode, the woman she's been trying to like get all to herself finally tells her she's going to die alone. And I'm just like, thank God she actually got what she deserved for like all this shit she's been doing all season.
Yeah. So speaking of the last episode, we had 2 cameos from the first season. First we had Luke Cage dropping by.
Yeah, Luke Cage dropped by to give a pep talk for no reason.
I think it was almost more just like, I think that they knew that Luke Cage was going to be canceled. And so they just wanted to give, because the way Luke Cage season 2 ended with it being questionable if he was going off the deep end, I think they just wanted to like give you a little checkup on Luke Cage and say like, yeah, we know we made it look like he had gone off the deep end and we were going to explore that in the season, but now that we can't, we just want you to know that he's still okay. He's just teetering on the edge.
Well, they said he's still okay for now, but it's still a possibility he could go off the rails.
Yeah, but I think that was put in there specifically for that reason.
Right.
And then the ending, I think, was also them anticipating that their own series was going to end, because they had the part where they had the moment, and it was another cameo, but it wasn't like a real thing, and that was
a voiceover cameo.
Yeah, it was Kilgrave. Basically, like, she was running away. She was going to run away from all of her problems after it. She'd already resolved it, but she was going to run away, which feels a little off. It makes me feel like that whole scene was just kind of filmed last minute.
Well, it was somebody said that it was a mirror of the first season, where at the beginning of the first season, and she's about to run away. You know, as soon as as soon as she learns that Kilgrave is back in the picture, her first instinct is to just try and run away from him.
I think what happened is they knew that they were going to be canceled, and so they added this in quickly. So there's certain aspects of it, like the fact that she had already resolved the problem and then was running away, which was a little off, but they did it specifically so they could have that scene where she's about to run away, and then she, like, imagines Kilgrave basically taunting her about it and saying, yeah, go, run away, and all that stuff. And then she decides, you know, fuck it, I'm gonna stay and fight another day. And they play the song and stuff, and it's kind of like that moment, like, our time with this hero is over, but know that she's still out there fighting.
Yeah.
And it's like that kind of moment. That's what you put in when you suddenly have a series end. That's the kind of scene you put in where you're like, okay, we're not going to get picked up for another season, so we need to put a little message at the end. You know?
That's not a scene that you put in when you're continuing, because they must know, because they didn't like leave any loose plot threads, you know.
Yeah. They didn't create a new loose end.
No, Trish ends up getting sent to the raft, so she's gone. You know that. She
finally realizes she's the bad guy.
Salinger is dead because Trish flat out murders him. Jerry is going to die alone. All her plans turn to dust. And so it's just, Jessica and her new boyfriend. And they can have further adventures, but there's no dangling plot threads, there's just the possibility of more stories. So there's nothing that they need to pick up in a fourth season. A fourth season could start fresh, but there's not going to be a fourth season.
Yeah, I don't think they would have created that scene if they thought they were going to have a fourth season.
Right.
I think that scene was like a last minute, like as I said, it's the scene is like an end of series kind of moment, but it's not like an end of series like built to moment. It's not like we have one season to end it, let's build up to this point, because it kind of happens abruptly right at the end that the scene kind of jumps into being. But then that scene serves a purpose, which is to give kind of like a moment of closure to say, oh, she's gonna keep on fighting kind of thing. So it's totally an example of not knowing it's the last season, but then at the end of making that season, realizing it's the last season.
Right. Because
it's totally like that kind of scene.
Because I don't think they knew when they started writing and filming it, because they had to have started, writing the season and stuff before the cancellation started.
Yes.
And Jessica Jones, like this season, I think the season premiered late, because my understanding was it's been finished for a while, and Netflix just now put it out.
I would love to see maybe a 6-episode recut of this season.
Yes, me too.
Just cut out some of the extraneous shit. Cut out Hogarth's story entirely. Yeah,
Hogarth's story didn't do nothing to enrich. They could have left her character out of the story. I mean, having her suddenly taking up Salinger as a client just seemed like a weak justification for trying to include her in the main story, when it was clear that her side storyline had nothing to do with the main storyline.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed weak. Like, it was like such an left field, like nonsensical thing for her to suddenly do, that I felt like that was like they were trying to force her like to have relevance to the main story.
Yeah, it was weak. It didn't work well. I thought Malcolm's story was kind of hit or miss. Like, I think the things that had to do with his job and the choices he was making as far as like as an investigator worked. Yeah. I think the whole relationship drama thing was a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I did not care for Malcolm's relationship drama. Like, oh no, is Malcolm's relationship with this woman who only appeared this season, is that going to work out or not? I'm super invested in this relationship. I hope it doesn't. No, I don't care. This is like not Ross and Rachel.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised that they brought Oscar and Vito back and then basically just had them on for like a very small amount of time and then just completely forgot about them.
Yeah.
There is a season. This is like her potential love interest in the second season. And this boy that like really liked her and kind of like was giving her some kind of like a ray of hope for the future kind of thing. That was kind of his role. And I thought they were just going to ignore them this season. Like they never existed.
Right.
Like they did with the neighbor and his, and her brother or whatever, remember?
Oh,
in the first season, that was all that cracked out neighbor lady. And then season 2 started and just looks like she never existed. No. I thought they were going to do that with Oscar and Vito. I thought they were going to do that.
But they brought him in for a few episodes.
And then just had them disappear with no explanation or anything.
Oh, yeah. They just vanished. Vito is in the first 2 episodes.
They make it as if Vito's constantly visiting her and hanging around her office, and then he just disappears.
Yeah, he just stops.
They should have added in a post-credit scene where it cuts to her walking all determined now that she's decided to keep fighting. And as she's walking by, you see a pamphlet or a paper flapping on a telephone pole or something, or a light post, and it's a missing poster for Vito. He got kidnapped or something, and she just never even bothered looking for him or doing anything.
Also, she gets over not having a spleen pretty fast too.
Yeah.
They
make that such a big deal, oh, this is all the shit she's gonna have to deal with, and then it's just they ignore it again.
Yeah, by episode 4, it's
don't create the drama if you're not gonna follow through. We didn't need the spleen drama.
Yeah, we didn't need exactly. We did not need the whole spleen thing because it amounts to nothing.
Yeah, if you were gonna follow through with it and that was gonna be something throughout the whole season, that's one thing. But we didn't need that. So if you're just gonna dump it anyways, why even start it?
Right, exactly.
That seems to be something that's kind of a common thread in the Netflix Marvel shows. So it's kind of depressing that we now look back upon the Netflix Marvel shows as formulaic and having all these problems and running too long and all these things that this is kind of the way we look at the Marvel Netflix shows now when they started off so promising. And it's even if you went back and watched the good seasons, which are still good, they still hold up for the most part, you can see all the formula in them still.
Yeah, you can see all the formula. I still think Daredevil is the one that was most consistently quality. Especially the 3rd season, I thought was really great.
Maybe Punisher.
Yeah, but Punisher's 2nd season was really disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Punisher, I had real problems with Punisher because it started out awesome, and then once they go back to New York, the quality drops significantly.
That's true. That is true. The road trip part of it was actually pretty good, and then
yeah, exactly. It's if they stuck with the road trip motif, it would probably been a solid season.
Yeah, kept it a shorter season run with just that road trip thing.
Yeah.
Would have been a cool adventure.
Yeah, it would have been a cool adventure, exactly.
But yeah, so is there anything else to really say about Jessica Jones season 3 or Marvel Netflix?
Nope. Marvel Netflix didn't go out on the high that I was hoping it would go out to, but at least I didn't.
At least it's over.
At least it's over. At least I didn't hate Jessica Jones season 3. It was better than season 2.
At least it wasn't Iron Fist season 1.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it wasn't Iron Fist season 1. It just didn't hit those highs that the first season of Jessica Jones did. I'm just sad that we were never going back to, that season. I guess the series really did suffer without Kilgrave in it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think villain-wise, I don't think they really knew what to do without Kilgrave, and it's a shame.
So the moral of the story is you can't add David Tennant to your cast and then take him out of your cast.
No, that's why they had the cameos in season 2, and that's why they had the voiceover in the last episode of David Tennant, because even the writers know, they killed off Kilgrave, but they can't get rid of him entirely.
Yeah. So that's it. That's Jessica Jones season 3. That'll be our discussion for it. We didn't break it down into great detail because that would just take forever, and we just kind of wanted to discuss it in more generalities.
Yeah, and also I like discussing things like this in this manner more than breaking down every little event that happens in every episode, because let's be honest, it's 13 episodes and a lot of tedious shit happens. A lot of boring stuff happens. There are a lot of slow parts to it that I just, as a whole, do not interest me. So, it's better for me to just go and talk about the interesting stuff and the stuff that actually got an opinion out of me.
I will say that I will always remember the series finale, but that's because halfway through it, I got hit with a 7.1 earthquake. So I'll always remember that.
Always remember. There you go.
Let's move on then to Legion Season 3, Episode 2, titled Chapter 21, and Legion's eternal efforts to confuse us. And even further to confuse us, they even had a moment where they did like the lessons in time travel, and it said Lessons in Time Travel, Chapter 20.
Yes.
It's like, God, at least just have her say 21, so that we're on the same episode count at least.
No.
Noah Hawley wants to confuse us, not just with all the trippy stuff in the show itself, but even just with the numbers that designate what episode you're watching.
Noah Hawley does not care.
So this episode kind of took the focus away from Amal Farouk that we had last season, and Switch, who was also a big part, Nintendo Switch, that was a big part of the last episode as well. It kind of shifts focus a little away from them. They're still in it, but it kind of focuses in, I think mostly a lot of it's on David and Sid and their relationship, and just where it stands for both of them.
Right.
With Sid having so easily killed David twice in two of the different loops that happened in the last episode, and just basically being kind of like, nope, don't care, kill you, whatever.
It's clear that Sid is over David. And David isn't over Sid.
Yeah.
It's clear that Sid I would say she's moved on. She's still pissed about what happened. She's angry at David, but she's like in the just do the job mode. And we see this episode, David confronting Sid and really trying to repair this relationship, which...
Well, even outside of that, he's like, okay, you're not going to forgive me. This is over. Just leave me alone and I'll stay away from all of you.
Right. And she's like, no, that's impossible. You're the one who ends the world.
Which it's feeling more and more. It was feeling this case in the second season too, but even more and more through this episode that it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah,
it's like they know that David's going to destroy the world, so they're making it so that David will destroy the world.
Right. Well, what I think is happening, because Ahmad Farouk, who is now with them and is kind of like guiding their operations, I think he's manipulating events to have that eventuality. I think he's manipulating the people around him and manipulating events to make that happen.
Yeah, it seems likely. I hope that's kind of the direction they take, because like we talked about, I was not really happy with the way season 2 ended, the way they just kind of everybody turned on David and the way that happened. Like, I think that it just felt unearned, and it still feels unearned. And if it's a manipulation and it gets back to some level of sanity in the discussion of what happened between these people and actually goes to somewhere interesting with that, then that would make up for kind of all of my kind of displeasure about the way it's been handled so far.
That's my theory, because we do see like the conversation that she has with Farouk at the end, that Sid has with Farouk. And it's basically Farouk kind of, egging her on, telling her, basically telling her that she has to kill David.
Mm-hmm. Telling her also that she has to like manipulate him, that she should.
Oh yeah, that
she should like sleep with him to ensure his.
Well, he suggests that, but then like she says gross. Then he says, it doesn't have to be physical intimacy necessarily.
Emotional, which is even worse.
Yeah, emotional.
Especially for David, for somebody who's always questions what's reality.
So it really sounds like, to me, I read that as like he's not telling her how to get to David so much as he is manipulating her to use David and to further push David over the edge. He's trying to push David over that edge, is what I think he's really trying to do.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. It kind of wouldn't go in line with what we learned in the last season, but it could still be a part of the grander picture.
It could still be part of exactly. It could still be part of the grander picture. Cause like, come on, like he's one of the good guys now. Like we're supposed to like trust him and, his intentions. Like he wants to save the world. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard, and it's weird how everybody's like kind of fallen in line and like kind of decided that all of a sudden like he's the good guy and David's the bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about it. It just felt like such a forced twist. It didn't feel completely earned. Like everything that they use as an example example, like on paper has like, it has truth to it. Like you can use that as like, okay, well that is true. You could use that as an example, but that's all on paper. Like in actual execution, it feels unearned. It doesn't feel like they've really established that emotionally with the characters.
Right. I get, and no excuse, like Sid is absolutely right to feel the way she did, because what David did to her is unforgivable. It was really bad. Like I knew when I saw it, I was like, holy shit, like that is just really bad. Like,
yeah,
so,
but he also did it not out of like some premeditated stance or something. He did that largely because he's fucking damaged.
Yeah, but
he doesn't understand.
You can't use that as an excuse.
No, I'm not saying it's an excuse. It's more like an explanation. Like he's damaged. He doesn't understand what was wrong about that.
Right. He doesn't understand what was wrong about that. And we get this great scene with him and Sid where he's just like, he lays out his whole plan where he's going to go back in time and stop that from happening. And then Sid tells him it doesn't matter. Like, if you go back and change things, like, you're still the same person. You're still the person who would totally do that. That is the problem.
But that's arguable. That's what she said, but it's arguable because he also brings up this thing of like, well, if I go back and change me, I change the events of my life and it happened. And then her to say, you're still the kind of person that you've always been the kind of person where that you would do that. Then it becomes an argument of nature versus nurture.
Right.
And I think very much so that David's a product of his damage.
Right.
Of what happened to him and how he doesn't understand things. So if David is able to save David at a very young age, I don't think David would ever become the David we know. That's the argument of nature versus nurture.
Sid obviously disagrees with that.
Yeah.
And so
she believes in nature.
And so as a result, she's not willing to accept, David's plan as a solution.
Yeah. So it's basically, she's just like, no, David, no excuse, nothing. Like, it doesn't matter if you decide to do nothing. If you decided the only option is for you to die.
Right. Yeah.
And David's like, well, what the fuck? You're saying that's the only option? Like, I can't redeem myself. I can't do it. I can't do anything.
Right.
Not even to get you back, but just redeem myself and go away. Like, I can't even do that. Like, it's just my only option is to just die. It's only your way in this thing. And that's kind of fucked up in its own way. And that's what I don't like. And that's why I'm hoping that if they do make this a manipulation from Amal Farouk, that kind of comes into play.
Because it seems like, because we do see, like, after David has this unsuccessful meeting with Sid, he goes back to his hideout, I guess for lack of a better term. He goes back to his hideout and he starts raging and he starts generating like this negative energy. We see the blue energy he's been generating that people in his commune have been using as a drug. We see it flowing out of him. We see it turn red as he's releasing all this rage from being rejected by Sid, and that does feed into the theory that, he ends up destroying the world as a self-fulfilling prophecy because they push him towards it by telling him that he can't be redeemed and that he must die, not giving him any chances. So it does seem like if David does end the world, they have responsibility in that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping comes forward. It's the same thing with, like we were just talking about with Jessica Jones, like where I want it to be acknowledged that Trish is fucked up.
Right.
And like it's the same thing as I want some acknowledgement that there's some culpability on their side. Like I'm not saying excuse David for what happened or something. I'm saying like there's shit that happened with all of these people. These people have all fucked with each other. And David is, of all the characters on the show from the very beginning of the show, is by far the most fragile of all of them. And they all fucked with them for their own means and their own needs, including Sid in seasons 1 and 2. She fucked with him for her means, things that she wanted she manipulated him for. So it's like, I just think that they need to like address that before they can make the accusations against him, before those can be earned emotionally. They need to accept their share of the responsibility for what they did as well. Right. Like that's what I feel like. And until that happens, like I just can't sympathize with them,
Right.
So I don't know. It's like it's legions become complex for me.
At the same time, I don't think Sid is wrong for the way that she's feeling. I don't. I
don't either.
I see exactly where she's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. She has a fair point, and I understand where she's coming from. My argument is twofold. One is that this comes down to nature versus nurture, and you can't just go whole hog one or the other. And if you did, things would usually lean more towards nurture than nature anyways. That's kind of what historical precedent shows, you know? But beyond that, it's just the idea of like, if you're going to make a case that what he did by like manipulating her memories in order to like have her forget that she was angry at him and then sleep with him, then you have to use the fact that she used sex and she used his fragile state against him for her own means before in season 1.
Right, true.
So, and everybody did. Everybody was manipulating him to try to get him to do what they wanted.
Oh, yeah.
To me, that's mental rape in a sense, you know? That's what they were doing to him when he was obviously fragile, you know? And they were doing that anyways, and they don't accept any responsibility for that, like none. It's not a matter of like they accept responsibility, but then say, we accept responsibility for this, but what you did was unforgivable. It's like, no, we don't accept any responsibility for this, and what you did was unacceptable. And that's, I think, where I have a problem. Like, I can't, they're so one-sided and so uneven attempting to look at the other side of where this is coming from that it makes me like unable to relate to them emotionally, at least for now. You know what I mean? Like that's legions become complex for me because of that.
That's a valid point.
So I'm trying to think of other things that kind of plot lines and stuff that we had going on in this episode.
Besides the main, not too much. There was a plot line where they had that one guy with the tea hostage. They basically interrogate him. He's not too responsive. They drop him out of the plane.
Yeah.
And he gets picked up by Lenny. And then they have this cool little scene that's the Mad Hatter scene in Alice in Wonderland with Lenny as the Mad Hatter, and she, And I think what she's trying to do is she's trying to determine if he talked. But that's interrupted by Carrie and Carrie, that's interrupted by Carrie and Carrie, who show up and basically Lenny and her cult members, they start getting into a fight with that crew. And
then you find out that was pretty much all set up from David's plans.
Yeah, that was all set for David's plan because David mentions to the time, because if we go back further, David is with the time traveler and he's trying to learn about her powers. And he's asking her to show him her powers, and she shows him, and then he sees how she goes back in time, and he tries to do it himself, and he can't. And even with her grabbing his hand and trying to pull him into the time stream with her, he can't do it. He doesn't have the ability, so it won't let him. So he's trying to figure out a way that he can go back in time himself. Because the point is because his whole entire point is to not have the time traveler go back and do things. He wants to be able to go back in time and change things. Basically what he outlines to Sid, his entire plan. He wants to be able to go back in time himself. And so when he finds out he can't, he basically says, well, I know somebody I can talk to, who would know something. And he's talking about Carrie.
Yeah. And so you find out Lenny was trying to get information about if he talked and stuff. At the same time, she's just kind of waiting. She knows that they're following him, and she's just kind of waiting for the moment in which she can cause enough of a distraction to slip away with Carrie.
Right.
With the male Carrie.
Yeah, with the male Carrie. Yeah, the scientist one, not the one with the fighting skills, because David doesn't need fighting skills. Yeah. So basically Carrie, she ends up tricking Carrie into going back to one of the vehicles, the Humvees they came in, and he gets inside of it, and then I think what happens is she shoves him inside of it, and then she jumps into the driver's seat and drives off with him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this cool scene where he wakes up in David's compound and he's locked in this room, and then he's looking through the keyhole and he sees one of David's cult members bringing his food in. And then there's this cool scene where she walks in, he hides behind the door, she she walks in, then he starts hiding behind her and kind of like mimicking her moves and dancing around her. And basically like, he does this until he's able to grab his jacket, and then he runs out the door without her ever noticing him.
Yeah.
It's really funny. It's really cool.
It's, again, very Looney Tunes.
Yeah, it's very Looney Tunes. Yes. Is another Looney Tunes moment.
Yeah.
But it's just a really cool scene. And then as he's wandering around, he runs into David, and then that's when he's brought to his lab by Lenny, you know. She's like, "We got your shit, Professor."
Well, David manipulates him.
Yeah, David manipulates him.
They gas him with the drug.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Made from David's energy, and then David kind of infiltrates his mind and kind of like convinces him to help him.
Yeah, convinces him to help him.
And then he meets the time traveler, and she kind of explains her situation, and he's fascinated, and he says he needs technology, and so she leads him to a room, and Lenny's sitting in the room, and she's like, "We got your shit."
Yeah, we got your shit.
And so he's happily looking for a way to do it, and then they're asking him like, well, what do you think what David's going to do? Like Lenny asks, what do you think David's going to do? Where do you think he's going? And what time is he going to, and what's he going to do? And he says he's going to save the world.
I feel like there's some tension between Lenny and David. Maybe not from David's end, but certainly from Lenny's end, where kind of like she's in this position where she's subservient to him, but but she's like over everybody else, and it kind of feels like
she's his bottom bitch.
Yeah, she's his bottom, and it kind of feels like to me like she would rather be in control of the whole thing.
Yeah, or she just wants to be. She wants it to be her and David against the world, kind of.
Yeah.
And now that you have all these other people, she's okay with that as long as they're all underneath her. But then the time traveler, like there's a moment with when David's talking to the time traveler, and he tells Lenny that she can leave, and she's really upset about that.
Yeah, she's like, yeah.
Just previous to that, she had explained to the time traveler how, just don't get ahead of yourself and know that he's number one, I'm number two.
Right, exactly.
You're below me. You work for me.
Yeah, there's that scene where she's asserting her dominance over the time traveler, trying to put her in her place, and then that's kind of, and that whole display is undermined when David sends her away when he's talking to the time traveler.
Let's also not forget that Lenny, that we know now, that has a different eye color, that's David's sister's taken over body.
Yes, that's David's.
His sister's been erased. This is like when we talk about Amal Farouk being a bad villain. He erased David's sister's personality just to fuck with them.
Yeah.
Then recreated her like Lenny in that form, but left the eyes the same for the express purpose of fucking with them.
Yeah. So basically, he erased his sister and replaced her with Lenny and left her eyes the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That is probably one of the most fucked up things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's worse than death, basically. Just erased her existence out of her mind.
So Lenny desperately wants to have this relationship with David, but I don't think it's going to happen given that, she took the place of his sister.
Yeah.
So it's tragic.
Yes. And trying to think if there's anything else we really want to go over. I mean, I don't really want to dive plot point by plot point because Legion's just a really surreal show and it's hard to do that.
Yeah, it's hard to do that with Legion. It is. It's too surreal. It is so... Yeah, it's surreal. It's like every episode plays out like a dream. Literally. Yes. This is how dreams work. Describing an episode of Legion is like describing a dream you just had last night.
There's I was putting off blue energy and people were getting high on that energy. And they were sucking it out like smoke out of the nipples of a giant creature that was...
But then the energy turned red and people start to go crazy. And it was yeah.
Yeah, that's Legion in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
Like I said, it's complicated for me now because of I just don't like the way they did the twist. It's not that I don't like that they did a twist like that. I just don't like the way they executed it. And it's it's making me feel I'm holding out hope that there's some other explanation to that.
So you're kind of anxious to see if they redeem that twist or not.
Yes, exactly. I really hope they do, that they redeem redeem that twist. They make that twist. They earn the twist that they already did. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to know until they decide to tell me.
And with this being the last season, who knows?
But yeah, so that's it for Legion. But we still have some shows coming up this week, so we're going to talk about what's coming up in the week ahead. On Monday, July 8th, Scream comes to VH1. It's making a shift from MTV to VH1 for its third season.
Yeah, not a huge shift because VH1 is basically a sister channel to MTV.
Yeah, they figured out it was the people watching Scream were too old, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
So they moved it to their older MTV. VH1 is like MTV is like high school kids and VH1 is like retirees.
Yeah. Exactly. It was like all the boring music was on VH1.
Yeah. It's like you'd turn on MTV and get like, Nirvana, and you turn on VH1 and it was Rod Stewart.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, then on Tuesday, July 9th, The Disappearance comes to WGN. On Wednesday, July 10th, Harlots to Hulu. Snowfall returns on FX. Florida Girls comes to Pop, and Family Reunion to Netflix. Then on Thursday, July 11th, The Outpost returns on the CW. If you want to watch like a really cheesy fantasy show with like really bad effects and stuff, but almost in a charming way, like a Hercules and Xena style way, that's The Outpost on the CW.
I love Hercules and Xena style. You know what was also like?
But what if the special effects were still like that?
Yeah, exactly. You know what was also like in the same vein, like a good cheesy fantasy series, if you can find it anywhere? It's Legend of the Seeker.
That was also from Hercules and Xena were from Sam Raimi and Rob Tappert.
Oh, okay.
It's from Renaissance Pictures, their TV brand or something. So it was mostly Rob Tappert. Sam Raimi's kind of just on as producer, but those were like Rob Tappert's babies. He ended up marrying Lucy Lawless, Rob Tappert.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, they're like the creators of Evil Dead and stuff, and so they started their TV wing with like Hercules and Xena, and they've had stuff constantly like since then, just not nearly as high profile. And Legends of the Seeker was one of theirs as well.
Okay, yeah, because it really did feel like a show.
Spartacus was too, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Spartacus, that's a whole different beast, because that, yeah.
Ooh, that was under their banner as well.
Well, that makes sense then that Lucy Lawless was in that show.
Yep. Also coming on Thursday, July 11th is Siren to Freeform. That's their mermaid drama, their mermaid horror drama thing, whatever. Yeah. I don't eat seafood. Then on Friday, July 12th, Bonus Family comes to Netflix. One Spring Night comes to Netflix, and Three Below returns to Netflix. Three Below is Tales of Arcadia. That's Guillermo del Toro's like extended universe animated series on Netflix that included like Troll Hunters.
When you said Three Below, I thought it was like a sequel to that Disney dog sledding movie.
No. Three Below is like you've seen Troll Hunters, right? Or at least know of it. That's that Guillermo del Toro DreamWorks CG show. Three Below is like connected to that. It's like the same universe, but instead of like the underworld and trolls and fantasy stuff, it's like aliens. But it like takes place in the same town and has some of the same peripheral characters.
Yeah, that's the way I was thinking about Eight Below.
No. Three Below is part of that Guillermo del Toro DreamWorks extended universe on Netflix. So they're doing a few different shows. They have that Three Below, they have Troll Hunter, and they have, I think, 2 other shows they're working on as well.
That's cool.
The whole extended universe. But yeah, and so that's on Friday, July 12th as well. That's it for the week. Next week, you can join us. We're going to continue talking about Legion. We're going to be talking about the 22nd episode of the series, episode 3 of the season. We are also next week going to be talking about Stranger Things. So Stranger Things 3 came out on July 4th. I was originally not going to be planning for us to be talking about this for like another 2 weeks, but Will said that he's moving forward and he's on pace to finish it in time. And I'm like, well, okay, if you're on pace and I'm on pace, let's do this. Let's get it done.
I looked at the episodes. It was only 8 episodes. I'm like, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Like, if it was like 13 episodes or something, probably not. Like, I would have to like double up and everything. But since I can do it 1 episode a day, then that works.
Yeah, so that'll be next week's discussion is Legion and Stranger Things. So look forward to that. Until then, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Foxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. Just look up The Total Screen or The Weekly Set. Some combination of those, doing a search, you'll find it in your podcast app of choice. The entire backlog of our podcast is also available on our YouTube channel. So if you're just going through the audio subscription through like a podcast feeder, you're only going to get like the last 2 or 3 episodes of the show, just because that's what we're limited to space-wise for our podcast host. But YouTube, we can just have the entire lineup on there. So if you want to go into back episodes, this is episode 213. So you can listen to all 213 episodes on the YouTube channel.
I wouldn't recommend that you do that unless...
I recommend that you do. Binge our podcast.
We got that sweet YouTube ad revenue, like someday.
And because we mainly use it as an archive and we focus mainly on getting it through the audio subscription, there are some episodes that have like 0 views on them. So you can be the first. Ooh. We also have other content on there. We do kind of like little video breakdown things. We did them last for Game of Thrones for its final season, but we've done it for other seasons before. We did it for American Gods. We've done it for a few different things. So if you're catching up on one of those shows, might check it out and kind of watch along with us in a sense. You can like watch an episode and watch the corresponding video that talks about that and kind of get like, it's almost like you're in going back in time and talking about the shows. So yeah, if that's not convoluted and ridiculous enough, that's it. That's it for the show. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best